probably the best picture I've ever seen of why the lake is called Mirror Lake. Absolutely perfect mirror image. You could probably turn that upside down and most people would never know.
Yeah.
Paul, could you yell just a little louder?
Sure.
Thank you.
Forward.
We'll talk today about the creation of Mirror Lake and a little bit on Timmy's Mill and the Morris Hotel, two of the institutions that were on the lake and still well known. Before all of this, before any of this was here though, we go back to settlement times in the late 1830s, 1840s, and this is the first federal survey map of this corner of the world, and shows the quarter sections laid out. We like to put order on disorder, so we put all these square sections on here so we can start to divvy up the land. These darker lines are the streams and creeks through the area. These lighter lines are the Indian trails that once went through the area. Zoom in there a little bit. We're going to morph through to a more current map so you can tell where the heck we are. And of course there's the Wisconsin River.
Yeah, it's too bright. Okay.
This is about a 1953 map of the area. Of course, Mirror Lake is down here, but it all started, of course, with Lake Delton, or the Delton area. Of course, Bartlett's Bay here, so we'll go back to the other map for just a second. This being the swampy area that's was Storybook Gardens, behind Storybook Gardens. Of course, the entrance to the river there. Settlement started here in the 1840s at the mouth of Dell Creek to provide goods and services to the raftsmen who would stop after coming through the narrows of the dells to reassemble their rafts and walk up to the upper dells to bring other rafts through. There were specialized raftsmen that would take those rafts through the dells area and walk back up to the top and do it all over again. But it wasn't long, however, that other settlers came, and of course water meant water power, and sawmills were set up along Dell Creek, or dams and sawmills were set up along Dell Creek to take advantage of that. We'll morph through to a 1859 map of the area, the first full map of Sauk County, and one of the first dams was the one built down at the mouth of the Dell Creek area by Jared Fox and Elijah Topping around 1849. Actually theirs was up here. The grist mill was theirs, which was later known as the Sarrington Dam. We'll zoom out a little bit. This map was done by William Canfield, who was the first Sauk County surveyor, and he was also very interested in history and geography and whatnot, so he actually includes things like neighborhood of many dells, meaning all of the rock formations. Notes things like Prospect Hill, Congress Hall, which of course is Lost Canyon, and of course these very optimistic cities around the area. Lots and lots of city blocks: Delton, Newport, Kilbourne City. The town of New Buffalo was organized in 1850, named for Buffalo, New York, where many of the settlers came from. In 1850, the population was 224 people. Just 4 years later, or 9 years later, by the time this map was drawn, the population had jumped to well over 1,100 people. And again, two dams at first, the one here for a sawmill, and the one further up for a grist mill by Fox and Topping. So what led to the creation of Mirror Lake? One word, and that word is wheat. During the 1850s, wheat became Wisconsin's first major agricultural crop. Advances in agricultural equipment better suited to prairie conditions allowed more acres to be planted. And by 1860, Wisconsin was producing the second highest yield of wheat in the U.S. Over the next 5 years, Wisconsin farmers harvested over 100 million bushels, more than 2/3 of which were exported out of state. So in February of 1860, a man named Benjamin Borman purchased 1/4 of an acre along the rocky cliffs of Dell Creek to build a dam and mill, paying the princely sum of $1,000 for the property and flowage rights to the waters upstream. And you can read the description there. This is the basically the birth announcement for Mirror Lake in 1860. Borman was an Englishman and seems to have come across the pond sometime around 1840. 2 of his children were born in New York State, but by 1845 he is listed as being from Delavan, Wisconsin on a land record, and on the 1850 census he's listed as a farmer in Walworth County. By 1855, however, he has found his way to Delton, being listed on a land record here. This is a indication of how big wheat was in Wisconsin and Sauk County. This is the mill in Baraboo, Wisconsin at the time. This was built about 1855. The Bassett Mill. At the time, Sauk County had 16 run of stone, which meant 16 grindstones that could turn wheat into flour. This was the Bassett Mill, which was the largest. It was twice enlarged. In 1860, at the same time Borman was building a dam here, Bassett was putting in 2 more run of stone at this mill, and 2 new steam-powered flouring mills were also being built that year in Sauk City and Abelman, each with 2 runs of stone. So with Borman's new mill here on what would be Mirror Lake, Sauk County's milling capacity was about to be enlarged by 50% that year alone.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On that photograph, 2 things. The filigree work off the eaves, what group of people would have done that?
Well, I'd love to go back, but I haven't figured out this new.
And then what about the widow's walk up there? What's the purpose
Yeah,
of that?
I'm not sure. I would suspect that it may have had a utilitarian purpose for getting to the fires were extremely problematic, and you wanted to be able to get up there and put out a fire in that wood shingle roof. This style of ornamentation comes from the Gothic Revival style, which was popular at the time, so it's purely decorative,
Yeah,
but
it's nice.
yeah, very nice touch. This was down on Water Street in Baraboo, if you're familiar with Baraboo at all. It's about 2 blocks west of Circus World, living right on the water there.
Thank you.
An early picture of the dam here at Mirror Lake. This was how Borman's dam was built, with crisscross logs. The dam was started as soon as possible in the spring of 1860 because that mill had to be up in time for the next wheat harvest to make it profitable. By July of 1860, the new dam was just about completed when disaster struck. And the Baraboo Republic of the time had this article, which I will read. On Saturday evening about 10 o'clock, the new dam across Dell Creek near Delton, being built for B. Borman by contractor J.H. Adams and nearly completed, suddenly gave way at the south end, precipitating a vast body of water upon the dams and bridges below. Some idea of the volume of water can be formed when it is stated that the dam raised the creek 13 feet and backed the water for 5 miles on a width ranging from 1 to 300 feet. The flood came down a perfect torrent, struck the new high bridge on the main road to Delton, but injured it only so far as to stop the travel over it for a few days. It then struck the bridge over Fox and Topping's Mill Pond, lifted it up bodily, and after carrying it some distance down the stream, deposited it high and dry on the shore with little injury. Next, the flood tore out the dam of Messrs. Fox and Topping and endangered their fine flouring mill, so that the proprietors thought it prudent to remove its portable contents, but fortunately no injury was done to the structure. The next obstacle, the dam at Newport, lying about 3/4 of a mile below, it swept away, together with the wings of the mill and also the substantial bridge across the creek at its mouth. But one thing more remained for the flood to accomplish. Dr. Ambrose Jones of Newport had just constructed a small steamboat on the bank of the Wisconsin near the mouth of the creek, and it was nearly ready to be launched and put in the machinery. The rising water launched it rather prematurely and carried it down the river, and unless it had struck a sandbar or being otherwise impeded, it is now probably running at large upon the father of the waters. The cause of the accident appears to have been an insufficient abutment for the timbers at the point of rupture of Borman's Dam. The intention was to have abutted it upon the solid rock, and the contractor supposed he had done so. This dam is not greatly injured, but will have to be lengthened in consequence of the water cutting away the bank. Fox and Topping will undoubtedly repair their dam at once, as they cannot afford to have their mill idle. The lower dam is thought will not be repaired at present. It seems fortunate this accident, which even now will prove a severe loss to many, did not happen later in the season when milling operations are crowded. The total loss is laid at about $3,000, but we trust this may prove an exaggeration. The catastrophe, however, will be productive of great inconvenience, as there is no bridge on the creek below Excelsior.
What
Great
year was
writing.
that?
1860 as the new dam was being built. So again, that dam is down here, but it took out Sarrington's, what would later be Sarrington's, and the sawmill dam down below, which was apparently never rebuilt. In November of 1860, Benjamin Borman and his wife Elizabeth sold the mill property to Horace LaBarre. LaBarre was a relative newcomer to Delton in May of 1860. He's listed as being of Walworth County on a land record, but by November is listed as being of New Buffalo, the old township name here. LaBarre was born in Pennsylvania around 1827 and is listed as being a farmer in Delavan in the 1860 census. It is quite likely he knew Benjamin Borman, and there may have been a family connection. And Albert Borman is listed in the LaBarre household in 1860, and this could be Benjamin Borman's son. Many county histories refer to the firm of LaBarre and Borman as owners of the mill. It's unclear how long this partnership lasted, and here's one of the early ads from 1864. Borman eventually left the operation, and Horace LaBarre ran the mill for the first 11 years. In 1866, the mill was running 3 runs of stone and could manufacture up to 200 barrels of flour a week. LaBarre was shipping the flour to Chicago as the Occidental brand. The Baraboo Republic describes Horace LaBarre as a very upright and energetic businessman and thoroughly master of the milling business. The paper describes the mill as very nice at a very romantic spot on a romantic creek. The original name of the lake is reported to have been LaBarre's Pond. This was changed to Mirror Lake, reportedly when Clara Noyes of Kilbourne exclaimed, "What a mirror." In March of 1871, Horace LaBarre sold the mill to Frank Dorn of Delton, along with a slew of village lots, for $9,400. LaBarre eventually moved to Jewell County, Kansas. This is one of the earliest known mills of the area, earliest known pictures of the area taken by H.H. Bennett, showing the low wooden bridge, which was the main bridge into Delton, the dam, and the mill there on the right. Dorn operated the mill for 2 years before selling it to Jacob Adams in 1873, and if you remember, Adams was the man listed as building the original dam in 1860 for Borman. By this time, Adams also owned the lower mill, the Topping and Fox mill, as well as a foundry. Adams ran the mill for 11 years before selling out to David S. Buck. Buck was from Middleville, Ohio, and had a brother who was a miller who was supposed to help him run the mill. Buck mortgaged the mill to a J.P. Schultz of Baraboo in 1884 and lost it a few years later. In 1890, the mill was purchased by David Reynolds. Reynolds oversaw the addition of rollers to the mill, and this was a new way of grinding wheat with steel rollers instead of the stones. in that picture. This is not that mill, but a similar type of operation, showing the hopper for the wheat to go into the grindstone, which was encased in this housing down here. You can see a millstone there in the back. And of course, water power ran the shafts, which ran the grindstone, and the grain goes in at the top, and out comes the flour. So on some of these later pictures, you'll start to see Mirror Lake roller mills painted on the side of the building, indicating that it was now an more up-to-date roller mill, but it also did keep its some of its grindstones to make specialized flour. In 1894, August Timmy, a 51-year-old German immigrant, purchased the mill and lent it the name that would stay with the site until this day. Timmy had been head miller at Hoyt's Mill in Baraboo. That was that large building we saw earlier. So he knew his business. And Timmy had 4 sons and 3 daughters, but had lost one of his daughters and wife a few years before he bought the mill here. An iron bridge was built across the creek, as you saw in the picture there, around 1905, and was a big improvement over the wooden bridges before it. August Timmy and his sons would see the mill through its biggest improvements and through some of its biggest catastrophes. After about 14 years in operation, the Timmys faced one of the first great crises when the Delton dams went out in April of 1908. A heavy rain in the area caused the dam to go out in the night. The south end of that 1860 dam gave way, and it wasn't long before the lake was gone. The flood also took out the fairly new iron bridge, and then the Sarrington Dam and Flue, which were also destroyed. So by this time we've got some cameras around, so here's some pictures of the 1908 breach. Here's what's left of their fairly brand new iron low bridge. Looking the other way. I just wondered what this is. This looks like a boat hull or something in the bank. There was some speculation that dynamite might have been used to blow up the dam by angry fishermen who were displeased with new laws regulating the sport, but I don't think August Timmy thought much of that. But the loss of the lake was not only a hardship to the mills, but also the burgeoning resort industry that had sprung up around the lake. This was Al Ringling's favorite spot in the world. One silver lining was that after the dam went out, small pools of water were left, which made for easy fishing. It was also reported that a search might be made for a gold watch lost in the lake. The low iron bridge was wrecked beyond repair, as you saw, and was sold for scrap. It was then decided that a new high bridge would be built. Work began as soon as possible on the reverse truss bridge. It was built by the Milwaukee Bridge and Iron Works Company. It was said that the reverse design would make the bridge less susceptible to wind and storms. Here's some pictures of the bridge going up. OSHA did not exist at this time. Almost done. The bridge was completed in December of 1908. There it is. August Timmy retired from the mill about this time and moved back to Baraboo, turning the business over to his sons, and he died in 1912. The Timmy brothers enjoyed a few years of calm before the next calamity struck in June of 1917. This time, the Sarrington Dam downstream was the first to go, and then the north end of the Mirror Lake Dam went out and threatened the Timmy mill building itself. Quick work with sandbags against the foundation saved the building, however. The dams were rebuilt as quickly as possible, again with logs. In the 1920s, a cement face was finally put on the dam. there's a good picture showing how tight that the mill got to being underneath the bridge, which would later prove to be kind of a problem. I'll switch gears a little minute here and talk about the Ringlings. Here's a good aerial view of the dam and the mill, the bridge, and the Ringling property, which would be off to the upper right. Al and Lou Ringling bought property on Mirror Lake at the Lockmere Park development in 1908. There's Lou and Al. And they constructed a cottage there, and again, this was their favorite spot on earth. Both Al and Lou liked to fish on the lake, often bringing along Lou's nephew, George Burdick. There's the plat of Lockmere Park, and we have a lot somewhere over here with this cottage on it. This was a vast contrast from their sandstone mansion in Baraboo, which they had built in 1905. Yeah, thanks. There's their house in Baraboo, which is today the Elks Club. That cost them $35,000 in 1905. Al built the theater in Baraboo in 1915. This cost him $100,000. But their favorite spot in the world was on Mirror Lake. Al died January 1st, 1916, and his will left Lou Ringling $325,000 in cash, this on top of $100,000 he had advanced to her in 1914, and of course the cottage and land here at Mirror Lake. Just a few months after Al died, Lou poured her efforts into developing their property at Mirror Lake. In the spring of 1916, she had 2 cottages erected at Lockmere Park, which were promptly offered for rent in June at the rate of $10 to $12 per week. The following summer, Lou constructed a 32 by 60 foot dance pavilion at Lockmere Park, which was the scene of many late night dances. The pavilion featured electric lights, a fireplace, and hardwood dance floor. The hall was finished in white with red flowered draperies and long mirrors. If an orchestra could not be furnished, there was an electric player piano. The kitchen was also built, and the pavilion had a screen porch of 10 by 44 feet. The new dance pavilion and cottages were also well received and inspired Lou to make more developments at the lake, this time at the east end. In the summer of 1919, Lou purchased the M.L. Crane property at the east end of the lake and announced she would build a summer hotel, cottage, and dance pavilion at the site, which was close to Timmy's Mill and the dam. Now, mind you, she was 68 years old at the time, but she was hearkening back to her childhood when her father ran a hotel rather in McGregor, Iowa. Delton at the time was the sleepy crossroads. Some had counted it among the ghost towns of Sauk County. And this is downtown Delton looking west from the stoplight corner about that time. Construction on the new hotel started immediately, and in the summer of 1919, by late October the foundation walls were nearly done and great piles of lumber sat on the ground. In November, walls were going up on the 2-story structure which contained dozens of rooms. Work was halted over the winter and resumed as soon as possible in the spring. By early July of 1920, the hotel was ready and opened July 3rd. The Baraboo Weekly News of July 8th reported the following: new hotel at Mirror Lake overflowing. First guest registers on July 2nd and 154 dinners served the following evening. Mrs. Al Ringling's handsome inn at Mirror Lake, the Morris, which was her maiden name, costing upwards of $100,000 with its dancing pavilion, garage, gasoline plant, well, and launches, opened with eclat on July 3rd, when 154 dinners were served, with nearly as many each meal on July 4th and not many less the day following. All the 37 rooms were taken for the night of the 3rd, each accommodating 2 persons, and some applications were denied. The first name on the lobby register of the hotel was penned July 2nd, a date fit to be duly recorded with historic reason, but the hotel was not supposed to open until July 3rd. Scores of persons motoring by stopped to dine, then rolled on. At the same time, the Ringling Pavilion at the upper end of the lake was filled with dancers throughout the 3rd. The giddy whirl continued until late into the evening. Almost more cars from Illinois were parked about the place than from Wisconsin. Some came from Ohio and other states. Guests report an excellent cuisine, quick service, and best of all, a box spring bed in every room. A mishap on the night of July 4th was the total failure of the water supply due to some fault of the vacuum pump, and guests rising on the 4th had to make ablutions in water hand served in pitchers, pans, and dippers. Yet this added a comedy touch that merely provoked mirth in an ensemble so finished. The hotel was improved over the years and quickly grew to include cottages. You see the landscaping improve here. The dance pavilion and auxiliary buildings were also built. The grounds were increasingly more manicured, and eventually traffic was directed to the hotel through an elaborate arch with the name of the hotel in homage to her family this time. Al had his name on the arch of the theater, and Lou had hers here at the Morris Hotel. The interior was treated and designed in simple but elegant arts and crafts style. Guests entered a homey lobby complete with fireplace and telephone booth. Souvenirs could be purchased at the counter and postcards addressed at the lobby desk. Prominently placed above the fireplace was a picture of Lou Ringling, which is this picture right here. The dining room of the hotel was elegantly appointed with linen-covered tables and bent-back chairs. Note the clever use of space of the supports in the middle of the room. They've made a serving area there. The hotel featured 37 guest rooms, most of which opened onto hundreds of feet of screened veranda. Guests could also lounge on the lawn of the hotel or take a dip in the hotel's swimming pool, as it were, which was a concrete-lined or concrete-ended portion of one of the bays here on the lake. The hotel was a big success right from the start. Lou next got involved with the development of a country club in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Lou was the principal investor in the purchase of an old estate on the lake with the large 1860s era mansion. The deal involved several hundred acres and was rumored to be a $500,000 deal. The Morris Hotel was involved and was eventually sold in 1923 to John J. Daler. Daler eventually changed the name to the Mirror Lake Inn and added a 9-hole golf course to the west of the hotel. Back in Crystal Lake, Illinois, a development company was formed with Lou Ringling as vice president. Eventually an 18-hole golf course was built, complete with 300 trees from Baraboo, and the old mansion here was refurbished as the clubhouse. A large addition was also built in the 1920s. The crash of 1929, however, ultimately sent the country club into receivership, and Lou Ringling lost most of her fortune. She continued to spend summers at the Mirror Lake Inn and winters in Baraboo at her house there. This would all change in 1932 when the hotel caught fire and burned to the ground. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but the blaze, which started around 6 a.m., was first detected in one of the rooms above the kitchen. The Delton, Reedsburg, and Baraboo fire departments were summoned and arrived, but there was little they could do to save the hotel itself. Most of the furniture from the first floor was saved, but everything on the second floors was a total loss. There were rumors that the hotel would be rebuilt, but it is possible it was only partially insured. Lou lived out her remaining days in her house in Baraboo. When she died in 1941, her estate, which had been worth $425,000 in cash plus property at the time of Al's death 25 years earlier, was now worth $6,500. This was her house in Baraboo where she died. One of the last pictures of her there. The site, of course, of the hotel is where the Pine Cove condominiums are today, and there's some steps left from the north end of the building. Put those in context, I believe they're the steps that are right here under the porch at the end. And one last picture of the Morris Hotel and roughly where it's at. So we'll wrap up with what happened to Timmy's Mill. As I mentioned, in the 20s, a cement face was finally put on the dam, and Timmy Brothers enlarged the mill as much as possible and added a grain warehouse above the mill on the hill. The mill became famous for its self-rising pancake flour, and the mill was also one of the few that made pure gram flour on the old stones. Pancake suppers were also held with various organizations in Wisconsin and Illinois to promote the flour. In February of 1949, the Timmy Brothers retired and sold the business to Joseph and Frank Kaminsky. They continued to operate the mill until 1957, when a spectacular fire destroyed the mill on February 14. The fire was discovered by Lake Delton policeman Cliff Lamar at about 3 a.m. Eventually 7 fire departments and 100 firemen were on the scene, but there was nothing to be done except try and keep other buildings from catching on fire. The loss was estimated at $150,000 to $200,000. With the mill being built under the bridge also suffered major damage. The north end dropped 15 inches, and it was questioned whether the bridge could be fixed, but it eventually was and lasted until 1986. The dam property eventually went into receivership and was later acquired by the Hoffman Brother Enterprises and renamed the Ishnala Dam. In 1976, the dam was transferred to Sauk County. Oh, and one last little tidbit on the grotto. Not much is known about the grotto bar, but of course we all know where it was there in the hole. Fortunately, we do have some pictures of it. This is the lower iron bridge. And a rare interior shot there. Of course, when the farmers came with their wheat to the mill, they would have had to wait, hours for that to be done. So this is a good place to spend some time. Of course, the opening today.
Is that what it is now?
I think I took that last. Is that about what it looks like now? Okay, yeah. Open some. So. All right. Any questions? Well, you all have a special place here in Sauk County, so I commend you for having this association and keeping it in good shape and a nice place to visit. I believe it's the first, of course it was built for utilitarian purposes, but really spurred resort ideas in this area, and I believe Lou Ringling's hotel, the Morris, really probably inspired W.J. Newman to build Lake Delton as well. So I think it all kind of fed on each other, but Mirror Lake being one of the first man-made lakes, or the first man-made lake here in Sauk County, really kind of started the whole idea of a resort and whatnot here in the area. So it's an important piece of Sauk County history. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't promote the Sauk County Historical Society. Thank you to the association for being members. We do have a museum in Baraboo housed in the Van Orden Mansion. Thank you to these folks too for pictures and whatnot. We are housed in the Van Orden Mansion in Baraboo. We're open Wednesdays through Saturday, noon to 4. The museum portion, we also have a lot of archives. I'll leave some newsletters here for you, and also some membership forms. If you care to join personally, you'll get our newsletter, which comes out 6 times a year. And I do try and give an August talk every year on some, Lake Delta, Mirror Lake topic. I'm not sure what it's going to be this year. It might be the manhunt of '61, when a couple policemen were shot in Lake Delta. So that's available there. So come see us sometime in Baraboo at the museum. We're also developing the Sauk County History Center because we've been in the house since 1938, and believe me, it is full to the rafters, literally. So we'll be able to move all the archives and research out of the house into this building in Baraboo. So, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.